Hey, it's Coach MK. Before I get into this, happy Thursday, survived another week. Yay, us. I wanted to continue a conversation that was started in Ask Away the other day. A client wrote in asking about ADHD. I did a series on Facebook last year detailing my ADHD, how I manage it, and how it presents in different forms, things that I wish that I had seen when I was younger and I first received the diagnosis. So I wanted to, if I'm going to change the conversation about some of the stigma that surrounds not just the diagnosis but the treatments, then we need a visual out there that looks something other than whatever you get when you Google ADHD. And if you take a minute to do that, they're terrible. They're terrible. The two reigning tropes happen to be the spazzy kid. By the way, don't ever use that word. It's terrible. But the kid who can't sit still and runs around and and popcorn brain. And the other one is the daydreamer staring out and who can't focus on anything. And never is able to dial it in. And both tropes are ugly and reductive. There are 4 different presentations of ADHD. And I can't say that I speak for all of us because we are all very different, especially with 4 different types. But this is what I'm about to kind of talk through is how if you had to work with me at home in a distance learning situation, this is what would be most effective for me. So the original question was, Coach MK, how do I teach my kid the importance of schedules? And right away, my first answer, the way I began to answer that, as so many answers from me tend to begin, was you are not going to like what I'm about to say, but you did ask me for my opinion, and you had to have known this was a possibility. So gently and lovingly as I can possibly be on this, that's a terrible question. Here we go. So the problem comes down to this. I know that parents of ADHD children are operating from a place of fear, mainly because people who have this diagnosis, who are successful, so rarely talk about it. We are bombarded with images of the worst possible scenario. So all I can speak of is my own experience. I'm not qualified to talk about this. I'm not qualified to advise anyone about this. I am a run coach. Whatever the ugliest possible narrative that you would use to describe me behind my back, the most reductive one possible. Oh yeah, she went to Wharton. She got her MRS and is staying at home, and it's really sad. She couldn't hack it in corporate America. Couldn't hack it on Wall Street. Couldn't find a job. Whatever it is, yes, that's me. I'm that. I am that. And I know that there is some part of your brain that knows with this common diagnosis that your kid could be that too. And that's a source of anxiety and fear. If you ask me, though, I'll tell you that I have a beautiful life. I've had amazing jobs that I thought were way above my station. I've lived all over the world. I got into Wharton, and I met a dude there, and now who I still like after 9 years of marriage. And I have a family that I like and a business that I love. And oh my God, I'm happy. Your kid could grow up to be me too. It's not the worst thing in the world. So but I do understand the anxiety there because ADHD it does impact executive function, and the way that we operate is a little bit different than what people are used to seeing, or what the formula for success that has been beaten into your head as a parent looks like. So if your idea of coming home and replicating a home type of learning environment is we've got to keep them on the same type of school schedule moving every hour, I can tell you with me, that's not going to work. And if you came to me and said, as you were managing my work, and you came to me and said, we need to talk about the importance of schedules, I would give you one of these. I probably actually would. I don't know that I would soften that blow at all, because it's a really judgmental question that assumes that your child does not understand the importance of schedules. So if you've got a really little kid, maybe they aren't mature enough yet, but if you've got a preteen or a teenager, they probably do. Part of ADHD, and that once you've gotten the diagnosis, you can only get it after you have been failing to meet expectations somewhere else so frequently that your behavior warrants testing. So on some level, by the time you set foot in that psychiatrist's office, you know that you're failing and that the people around you are worried. No matter how, and I don't care if you're 6 or if you're 26, it's the same feeling. I know because I got tested twice. And I tell you that to tell you this. you are not subtle. If you are asking questions like that in front of your kid, what you are communicating to them is that you think they're stupid and that you're scared they're going to fail. That is what they're gleaning from questions like that. You are not as subtle as you think you are. You're dropping clues all the time, and you need to think twice about that. So rather than worrying about why won't my non-neuronormative child do this normative thing, how can I fit the square peg into a round hole? There's a whole conversation to be had about how things get done. Drugs are not a magic solution, but they do help. Drugs plus a combination of working in a non-judgmental therapy type environment with this therapist and specialist are a tremendous combination. And they're the reason I'm able to sit here today and speak so clearly about what works for me. What I'm also about to show you, though, is going to scare you to bits because, and I know this because it freaks my husband out sometimes when he sees how I plan and how I think. It's not enough structure for most humans. But again, when you think about ADHD and I leave room in here to fail. Because if I had my day stacked like a lot of normies do from here every hour, it's like dominoes. If something goes wrong with one call goes too long, I need to go to the bathroom a little. I'm eating takes more time than I think it will. All the dominoes fall. And then I'm really stressed out. So my whole day could be blown by 9 a.m. and there's no recovering from that. But I'm an adult. I can do things the way that I want to. I can structure things the way that I need to. And this is how I do it. If you have this conversation with your kid and give them a little bit of rein to create a structure that could work for them. Now, not to say they always get the final say, you are the parent, but if you get their input, odds are pretty good they can give you some semblance of an idea of what's going to work and what's stressing them out and what's triggering the ADHD that causes the brain spin that I talk about. If you have Beyblades in your house, that's what my brain does. It's like once something sets it off, I'm just sitting there like, it's not even ruminating. I just need to finish the spin before I can move on to the next thing. And the schedule I'm about to show you leaves me room to do that. So I spoke in that initial answer about rituals. Rituals matter more than schedules, especially if your kid is taking a powerful stimulant the way that I have to. The last thing you want, it's more important than whether or not they get their math homework done, is that they don't take that stimulant twice. So you need to have some sort of or at least I can't tell you what to need because remember, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist. But once I was finally prescribed this drug, a drug I would not take the first few times it was recommended to me, by the way, because of all the stigma around it. I was 20. I was older than that. I was 29, almost 30 years old. And it was game changing. That stuff was magic. And not because I was cheating or it was a magic skinny pill. It was none of that. Although it did take a while to get used to some of the impacts on it. For the first time, I had all the tools together and I could produce things. I could operate in a normative fashion. I could get things done and still be who I was, which is something I had really struggled to do and felt a lot of shame about for years. But back to this, I do this because of a powerful stimulant that brings me down that in a normative brain would bring you up and make you possibly more anxious. So to that end, I have a ritual and make sure I don't do that twice. Now, rituals have to be very simple. They have to be reflexive. They cannot be more than 3 or 4 steps. And it has to almost be intuitive, like flushing the toilet. Like you probably haven't had to sit down and talk with your kid a whole bunch about flushing the toilet or the importance of flushing the toilet. It's something that you have embedded that's a simple reflexive action that is done no matter what. So if you have a couple of those through your day, you can keep the day progressing. If you have too many of them, you're going to stress this person out because again, you're going to got to find that balance. And for each person, it's going to be a little different between don't think of it as having enough to do. Everybody's got plenty to do most of the time if you're able to have a schedule and have to ask me a question like this. But rather just kind of sit back and think about what do we need to get out of each and every day. So, but this is the type of schedule that if I was being micromanaged in other environments would freak someone out. I absolutely see how this could be looked upon as lazy. And if you want to call me lazy, a marathon running mom of 4 with a husband who travels for work, an entrepreneur with 17 employees, sure, I'm lazy, super lazy. But this is what my schedule looks like. And this is how I get things done and still have time to be the parent that I want to be. So again, I'm the best possible narrative is going to come from me. I'm also the worst possible narrative that you can think of. And if you're doing that to me, your kid knows that you're doing it to them too. So be cognizant of that. How you talk about other people who deviate from the norm is going to tell your child a lot about what you really think of them. So be careful. That worst possible narrative, that's your fear speaking, and your kid is probably somewhere listening. They hear a whole lot more than you think they do. And we are paying attention and hearing your words a lot more frequently than you think we are. We've just learned not to let it get to us, because nothing good comes from letting you know that you hurt our feelings. So I have my morning ritual, and this is where I've spoken about how the past year it's been complicated because we no longer have morning help. For years, decades even, my morning ritual was to get up, go for my run, and then take my medicine. So there's no question. Did I run today? Yes. If I did my run, then I absolutely took my medicine. There was no two bones about it, because it was the first thing I did when I came back in from my run before I got in the shower. Now I've had to create a different morning ritual, and this is why skincare, has become so it's been a game changer for me on so many levels. But it's I think of it as day face. I get out of bed, I put on my day face, and I'm ready to go. And after day face, I take my medicine. So my runs, now that we have everyone home all the time, I have a ritual. And again, anyone who's trained with me knows that ritual involves silly toes. It's a warm up for your tendons, joints, and ligaments, and a cool down that involves a very specific foam rolling pattern. Part of the reason it exists in that way is to make it mindless as possible. It's so that it is never missed. So it's so deeply ingrained, I can do it in my sleep if I have to. And I've done it sleeping sometimes where it felt like I was sleeping. But because of this, I can plug it into the middle of my day to break up in between my morning and my afternoon activity. And I can put it in my evening. And it's usually attached to eating. So, it's time to run. Okay, I run, then I eat. And it either happens at lunchtime or at dinner time. And then I have my night face. Day face comes off, night face comes on, and that's a signal to I am done. There is no jumping back into my email, no jumping back into Facebook, no jumping into my night face is on. It's that's the beginning of my sleep wind down ritual. So these rituals, and they're again super short, not that many steps, they are the guide points throughout my day, the starting cues for certain activities and the stopping cues for others. People with ADHD generally speaking, need to have things like this in our day. Think about the last time you binged either a box series. I remember the first time I got 24 in a box set and I watched the whole thing in 24 hours, or the last time you binge watched something on Netflix. That is kind of what my brain is like. And again, not all people with ADHD and not all brains. But once I'm on a topic, I might not want to leave that topic, and I have no idea how much time has passed, and I don't really care. So that is why these stopping cues are so important. And that is why Netflix is such that's why binge watching now exists, right? And normative people are doing it because there's no stopping cue. You can just go from episode to episode to episode to show to show to show, and it'll keep suggesting shows that you like. That's kind of how my brain works too. When I'm in the midst of a topic that I'm interested in, or now that I have a job that I absolutely love when I'm working. So these cues are good through the day. That can sound a little obsessive, possibly, but it works. Here's the part that freaks people out when they see my schedule. I have my morning activity, I have my afternoon activity, and they rotate through the week. Now, that's not to say I won't do more, but if you think about it and take the time blocks off and think about this is your general structure of the day, free from your watch, as many of you are doing now during this period of COVID. My morning activity, where things go is contingent upon when it's due. And I don't mean normative people tend to have these schedules and you have no trouble shifting them around or pivoting and changing. That's a very stressful thing for me because again, I could have failed by 9 o'clock in the morning. And especially if I know someone's watching me, like a parent, I'm going to be apologizing or stewing in that shame, having to defend myself all day long. And that's the last thing I want. And if you're having to oversee your kid, it's probably the last thing you want to. So it's what happens in this block, and this block is anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. Again, depending on the activity, depending on the day. It gives me this is the structure to make sure everything I need to do happens. So I have free time in the evening while my husband is still working, like now, to do things like this while my kids are down. I can go for a second run, which I've done. I can go for a walk and just enjoy the city lights, which I love doing here in Denver. It's so nice after dark. Or I can just sit down and think and be creative. I can binge watch something on Netflix. I can catch up on my podcasts, but I make space for that every single night. And a couple of times during the week too, specifically, that if I needed to do something, if it needed to be filled with a task, I've got room to move things around without all the tower of dominoes just like falling to the ground or feeling like a failure. It's pretty accomplished. It's very rare that I'll get through a week and have failed to do super necessary things, because even let's say I do communications on Tuesday. That's all I schedule. I'll write all the emails that have to go internally to the team or externally to clients. This is my time to sit down in a focused way, because there's generally my mornings are my creative times, because I have backup childcare around and no one else working in my office, and I can really just churn things out. And I'm under pressure to do it because I know that time is limited, because my husband will have to come in and start working. So if I'm on the things that really need to happen and need to happen in an expedient manner, that's how I do it. I can't create that pressure falsely, and you can't create it for your child either. That's not creating urgency or importance. That's stress. You're just creating anxiety, which your kid already has. Here's another way you can fail me, child. Try this. I found it on the internet. So social media will happen on Monday mornings. Internal and external communications on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, marketing. Now, this is also like a block, and it says nothing but that word in my calendar. So my marketing people know that they're going to hear from me on Wednesdays. They know that there are other times that they need me sooner, they will. But if there's stuff that needs to be generated, broadly speaking, that's when it's going to happen. Podcasts, I tend to do this on Wednesday afternoons, but I can switch and swap the blocks as necessary. If I'm filming a podcast like I was supposed to yesterday and that didn't work out, so I just swapped my Wednesday and my Thursday block. Not a big deal. Not stressful. If it had been a meeting that I had to cancel or reschedule, and I've got everything is in there so tightly, that's like Jenga. And now who wants to play Jenga every day? That's a really stressful game. So it keeps the stress down. It keeps the productivity up. It has enough stopping cues. It works for me. But if you look at this, if your child has come to you with something like this is what I want my week to look like, and you said that's not enough work or been worried that that's lazy, I get that. I absolutely understand how that can look to you, but I would beg you to sit down and really talk with them about what they intend to do at this time and how these rituals and the stopping cues are going to manifest. Are they going to get a Google alert that's going to blare on their screen like mine does? Mine will stop my computer. It will stop my phone. It will, whatever I'm doing, I have to, like that, it is programmed into my computer as a cue to come up and tell me that this has to happen. This thing has to be done. Finally, are you giving your kids free time? When you make this schedule, you've got to put free time, off times in there too. Odds are pretty good that time is going to get eaten up by something, but that also gives them room to maneuver instead of saying, okay, well, that's going to have to happen on what is usually my free time, and that's the weekend, which is going to, again, the anxiety is going to build. Now I have to work all weekend. It's going to make them really sour when it's unnecessary, or at least that's what it would do to me. So I'm not saying this is the way. I am not saying this is it. I am saying that as I have ADHD, I function in this world. I do a lot of things. And the way that I get things done does not look like the way other people get things done. Most people wouldn't call this a schedule. I certainly wouldn't. And that's okay. This is a general framework, and you hear me use that word a lot in my work. It's a framework, it's a blueprint, but blueprints were never meant to be static. They were meant to shift and change as the situation or the idea itself changes. I love the idea of the blueprint. So this is a blueprint of how my day flows, and this is a blueprint of how my work progresses through the week. It's not that specific. This is just very higher level thinking that we drill down into when necessary. But I also don't have to I have to-do lists that live in other places that I can come into. Oh, don't forget to do this, this, and this during that time, as opposed to a to-do list that pops up and trying to grab any bit of free time that I have that's saying, oh, you're sitting down, you could be doing this, or this, and checking these things off the list. Ugh, that's really stressful. So I'm a person who's programmed in a lot of downtime. And I also get that it can be stressful too, because we've been taught to think that, productivity is king and it's everything, and hustle culture, make more, do more, do more. There is no such thing as downtime. Anyone who sleeps is lazy. whatever, we human. Downtime and self-care are absolutely necessary. And I think normies are seeing that at an increasing rate right now. So good luck to you on that. And if you can't, join Fitness Protection, where I teach people how to care less, do less, and get more out of it. So I tell you all that to tell you this: if you're asking your kid, if you're asking me, how do I impress the importance of a schedule on my kid? I say kindly and gently, but frankly, you're asking the wrong question. Your kid probably knows the answer. Sit with them, have this conversation. Don't hesitate to speak with a therapist too. I get that you have to supervise and make sure that things get done, but the question you have to ask yourself on an ongoing basis is one that we have to do all the time. Do I want to be right, or do I want to be better? Do I want to be better in a way that gets things done? Does it matter that this is completed or that this is completed my way? Parenting doesn't have to be a power struggle, even though it does feel that way sometimes, and even though it is maddening. And I'm not saying I know anything about that either. I'm just saying I got 4 kids and I control nothing, and I know that. So the more that you can lean into that and help your child advocate for themselves, that's going to start by showing them that you care enough about them to listen. Because I'll end on this note. I can't tell you how many times I've heard a parent say, my kid knows that I love him no matter what, and then turn around, can you tell him how to do this? And that statement indicates to the kid listening that you do love them, but I can accept anything that my kid is, except their ADHD and the way they do things. It makes me crazy. Careful what you're communicating. Be thoughtful, be kind. I'm not saying that you're a bad parent. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm just saying that that was the first thing I heard in that question. And if you've asked it out loud, your kid might have heard it too. So a discussion of what's going to work. How can we approach this? If you feel free to use this, well, I hear this works for Coach MK and she manages to get things done. Could this work for you? If you have no basis other than a traditional looking schedule to use as a starting point, feel free to use, the MK way. Again, I'm not saying it's the way or it's going to work, but if you have no idea of what a non-schedule schedule could look like, here's one for you. Take a screenshot, take it to your kid, take it to their therapist, and start there. Because more stress and more pressure has never made me feel like anything other than a failure. It's certainly not what turns coal into a diamond. Google that too. That's a lie. It's not how it happens. It's a function of time. Yay. Thank you, Melissa. You are who I want to be when I grow up, and I adore you. Thank you for being here. So, and to the parent who asked, hope I haven't made you too angry, but you knew when you asked, you knew when you asked me, you were going to get how I really feel. And that is how I really feel about schedules.